the most important thing in a business is customers. So as long as you have satisfied customers, you can't have a business where you don't have satisfied clients and customers. The next big thing is always cash flow, because you can't run out of money. That's a disaster. So you have to plan your cash flow, make sure your reports are good, make sure your financials are accurate, and you're getting them on a timely basis. You have to know your cash flow. Every day I get what I call the KPIs, key performance indicators, that indicate what your sales are for the day, your shipment, your deliveries for the day, your inbound purchases, your raw materials, and right in there is your cash flow. What your cash flow is every morning, what your accounts payable are, what your cash requirements are going to be for the next week. Just make sure the lines stay together.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Bob Schlegel, who's going to share his entrepreneurial journey and all the ups and downs. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote is from Andrew Carnegie and was in our guest's book. It's more difficult to give away money intelligently than it is to earn it in the first place. Andrew became the richest man in the world, and then he gave the money away. The problem comes with the people who get it. Some great things come about, and some not so great. What are the lessons here? You can't make big change until you can figure out how to either earn big money or get it from others. And then it's about putting it in action to do good. It's a tough battle. Before we continue, let's review last week's action step, which was to get a coach in whatever area you struggle the most. As I've said, I've had coaches in the past. I will have them in the future. They help you get further faster in life. So why not get help? With the Great Resignation and a shift back to a more entrepreneurial spirit, many young people are going out on their own. It's great, though, to learn from those ahead of us. People make running a business look sexy. The reality is it's hard work. It was hard work for Andrew Carnegie. It was hard work for Bill Gates. I can tell you, for many small business owners, they give up a lot in their desire to build a business. The same is true for our guest. Bob Schlegel and his wife and business partner, Myrna, came from humble roots in small Ontario, Canada farming community. Together, they launched their first family business, PeopleCare Heritage Centers, that grew to include 15 facilities in both the U.S. and Canada. Later, he and a partner launched Pavestone Company, which became the nation's leading supplier of concrete landscaping products. They sold both businesses and today are involved in a myriad of new enterprises and philanthropic endeavors. Let's meet Bob and hear his story. Welcome to Richer Soul, Bob Schlegel. It's great to have you join us today.
Thank you, Rocky. It's great to be with you.
And I'm excited to learn from you today. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Wow, when I was a kid, I went to a one-room schoolhouse Rocky, in a small, we lived at a farm outside of an hour west of Toronto. And we were on the farm, and the schoolhouses were every couple miles apart. And we went to the one-room schoolhouse, and all 8 grades in the same classroom, same teacher. So you learn everybody's lesson, all 8 grades of it every day you're in school. When I was a little kid, Rocky, I was kind of energetic and enthusiastic and a little mischievous and ambitious. And I ended up getting in several different tough scrapes. So when I was 5, I broke my neck, fell off a piece of equipment I shouldn't have been on. And that was a tough part. I started grade 1 in a body cast. And the next year, it was our house burned down. And I was sort of the last one in the house. My brother and sister, my parents were away. My brother and sister were there. And I was the courageous fireman going to stay and put out the fire. And my brother dragged me out, kicking and hollering. And then the next year, I was attacked by a pair of Great Danes. So the book is called Angels and Entrepreneurs. Basically, because I have a lot of angels. I've had a lot of angels around me, and I needed them for most of my life also. So that's how I got there. And then just growing up at the farm, farming is always, goes in cycles and good years and bad years. And I remember just going to my father with go to the bank with my father, renegotiate his bank loans and explain why we couldn't, pay them off this year, maybe next year, and just all the things that go with that, learning to deal with people and bankers and cash flow and things like that I wasn't that familiar with, but I learned it after a few dozen visits to bankers and that sort of thing. And also, when I was growing up at the farm, we had a hog and dairy and cattle farm, chickens. Once a year, this good-looking car and a nice guy in a suit would come around to the farmhouse and spend a day with my dad and going over the finances. And I said his name was Jim Rote. And I said, Jim, what is it exactly you do here? And he explained he's the CPA. So that was always sort of in the back of my mind, because I really wanted to be a car mechanic. My dad had a gas station on the farm, the corner, and we worked on tractors. Massey Ferguson tractor dealership. Worked on tractors and equipment, and I was kind of a mechanically inclined. I really wanted to quit school after grade 10 and be the apprenticeship for a car mechanic. My cousin had quit school after grade 10, and this is what I want to follow in his footsteps. But apprenticeship for a car mechanic, because my dad had hired a mechanic paid him $100 a week, and I said $100 a week. That was in 1963 or 64 or something like that, and I wanted to make that kind of money. And so that was my goal for about a year or two, from grade 9 to halfway through grade 10. And my mother says, "You're not quitting school. You're finishing high school and going to college." But we were a Mennonite family, and all our brothers and our uncles and aunts lived with the same concession primarily. And the whole, all my 10 or 12 uncles and aunts lived within a couple miles of us, and all had their own farm. So, and then back in those days, the people didn't go to high school. I was sort of the first generation, my sister and I and my brother, to go to high school, because they always just after, we 12, 13 years old, he stayed and worked on the farm. So anyway, I went to school, got my degree, got my CPA, and there I was.
That's quite interesting. And so was it because the guy came around all the time? Is that what made you decide to get the CPA, or was there something else that inspired you?
Certainly he inspired me to do that. I tried to get into, I've got a good history of failing. Everything I tried the first time, I usually fail it. Like grade 9, I flunked. My first year of college, I failed. Grade 1 was tough in the body cast. So I'm generally, one of my main tools, we'll get into my later about the 5 pillars. The first one is persistence. I look at fail as a first attempt in learning, because you learn more from failures a lot of times than you do from big successes. So I'm pretty good at learning from failures. I'm pretty good at failing and recovering from them, or learning. I guess you have to learn from them, and that's kind of what drove me through all that stuff. I started off in a business administration program. Kicked me out of marketing, so I ended up with an economics degree. And with that, I worked a couple more years after graduation to get my CPA degree and the college credits to go with that.
And I know we're going to talk about this, but it's been quite a bit of a journey and a lot of hustle. And I've noticed people who grow up on farms kind of have that spirit, so to speak, because they have to almost working a farm. Did that have a big impact on you?
Absolutely. On farm life, there's always something that isn't done. So you never get everything done. So there's always something to do, and do more of it. So you really work as long as you can. and then you tell you're too tired, and then you crash and start over again the next day. That's the life of a farmer, I think, and it's just a different life. Thank goodness my brother, the oldest, still the tradition, the oldest son took over the farm, and so my brother was happy to take over the farm, and I was happy that he did.
So you didn't have to, right?
Exactly.
So what happened? You become a CPA, and then what?
I started where I worked at KPMG, Pete Marwick, but not KPMG for several years, and then started my own accounting firm. So my first venture in entrepreneurship was starting a big one. Adventure was starting an accounting firm, and then the senior partner came and joined us. So that grew very well. So after 8 years after starting into the accounting business, I left that and started. We were looking around for started our own enterprises and really looked at different options. My family also invested and started a nursery and retirement center. And my wife's a registered nurse, and so she worked there as a high school student and all the way through. And so at that point, we decided to want to do something on our own and look for another retirement center we could expand. Pretty hard to expand in Canada with socialized medicine. So we really looked at the Sun Belt, looked at Florida, Arizona, Texas, California. We weren't too crazy about the Canadian winters anymore, neither after that. So we were looking to find a place in Texas. So we expanded to Texas, and we bought a place there. We sold our house, raised all the money we could, and bought our own place, a small down payment on one in North Dallas. And we used to go back and forth. For 6 years, we had a little Chevy van. We put the kids and the dog and the nanny, the grandmas in the van. We'd go back and forth every other week or so. Headed down to a 22 and a half hour drive, Toronto to Dallas. And so we did that for 6 years till we actually moved here and bought a house here. That was a great learning experience, and just getting in here. And once we got stabilized, in our last day, and our kids that stayed in Canada went to school up there. And then it's sort of year number 5, the principal of school called us and said, your daughter missed 84 days of school last year because you're traveling all the time. You guys got to pick where you want to live. So that was a straw that moved us to Texas for sure.
And I know you did hustle quite a bit, going back and forth and trying to rebuild the centers and deal with all of the government rules and everything else that has to get done in order to do that. It was quite a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, there were a lot of things we've done back in the day. We didn't have a lot of capital to invest. They looked at turnaround opportunities because they're usually less cash, and some people the seller would finance them for you and that sort of thing. So that worked out good for us. Just about all of them were turnarounds. We acquired about one a year for the next 15 years before we sold them, and there were just about all were turnarounds and fixer-uppers, and we got pretty good at that. Had our own construction crews and HR programs and that sort of thing. It worked out well.
And you had some ups and downs even with that as well, didn't you? I remember one of the stories of having to clean out one of the places and dealing with unwanted tenants, I guess is the right
That's right. Yeah, that was intriguing. Turned out they were running a ring of a mini brothel in one of the vacant wings of the places. So we cleaned that up pretty quick and got it. And it became a beautiful center after that. Redecorated and rebuilt the whole thing basically. And trying we had to change the reputation around, obviously, and that was a big task, but it can be done.
That it can. So we're here to talk about your book today, Angels and Entrepreneurs. What inspired you to write the book?
But the big thing that I really wanted to inspire first of all, my kids are too old to be educated anymore. But whatever they know. But my grandkids were still coming up, and they never heard the history. So it was something for them. It started as a family history. Then we got writing it and got more involved in it, and the friends and kept asking what it's about, what's going to be. We broadened the scope, and really to inspire anybody that is inclined to look at entrepreneurship. Really create their own resources and their own wealth, so they can do great things with society and with their life and with their family. The big thing, I think, is the great wealth in the world. In the 80s, there's 40. I was reading the other day, 40% of the Forbes list in the 80s was made up of self-made entrepreneurs, and in the 2010s, it was made up of 70 or 80% of the list is self-made entrepreneurs. So it's really great wealth in the world is created by ambitious entrepreneurs primarily, but think of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, our current and highest profile favorites in America these days. And of course, they're huge, wealthiest people in the world, the two of them, because they started their own thing, basically. So it's really the whole entrepreneurship is where I started. Really got the whole goal for this. Before that, back in business school, one of my profs used to say, well, the really way to become successful in America is to be a Fortune 500 CEO, because that's, they have all the big companies, a lot of employees, and you work your way up and get stock options and shares and all that great stuff. And I think, well, that's pretty good. Then you get thinking about it. So, well, let's see, how many Fortune 500 CEOs are there? Well, there's 500. There's 360 million people in America. I don't think I got much of a shot at doing that. If you're going to join my chance of joining the National Hockey League is better than becoming a Fortune 500 CEO. So that got me more and more thinking of starting my own thing and being an entrepreneur. And then being with a CPA background, you get to see a lot of different environments and circumstances. I've always, even as a CPA, when I started my own accounting firm, it was kind of my first major business, and just compelled me to get into that.
When you ran your CPA firm, was it mostly business clients?
100%, yeah. We started with our own friends and family, businesses that we knew, and then a few years later, the senior partner from the old firm came over to our place, and that was a real boost for us. So at the end, we had about 10 partners and probably 1,000 small companies that we did their financials for.
What is the biggest issue you see with small business owners in their financials?
Well, the first thing is customers. The most important thing in a business is customers. So as long as you have satisfied customers, you can't have a business where you don't have satisfied clients and customers. The next big thing is always cash flow, because you can't run out of money. That's a disaster. So you have to plan your cash flow, make sure your reports are good, make sure your financials are accurate, and you're getting them on a timely basis. You have to know your cash flow. Every day I get what I call the KPIs, key performance indicators, that indicate what your sales are for the day, your shipment, your deliveries for the day, your inbound purchases, your raw materials, and right in there is your cash flow. What your cash flow is every morning, what your accounts payable are, what your cash requirements are going to be for the next week. Just make sure the lines stay together.
And that makes a lot of sense. I was always amazed at how many business owners didn't look at their financials.
That's amazing.
It is amazing. And, that's probably why so many of them struggle and don't do well over time.
In these days with apps, I have three of my daughters. I have 4 kids, three girls and a boy. My 3 daughters are all in social media, some kind of social media business, basically as influencers, influencing, and have a lot of followers. And they have apps on their cell phone. They knew exactly where their sales are. Got me kind of envious. So when I was that age, I didn't know where I was going. They knew every couple of minutes they could look at it and see where their sales are and weekends and everything else, and what their cashes look like. And it's phenomenal now. What's available on apps and the whole social media world is crazy.
It is. The world is changing, and it's constantly changing going forward. So you have to keep changing with it and adapting, and you never know what's going to hit you, right? And that's part of your history too, is just dealing with the economy. This COVID's not the first time you've had to deal with bad times, and it probably won't be the last.
My worst one, I think, or I feel is still the worst one. At the same time we started the healthcare business, my wife Sarah, she ran that. I started a concrete landscape product manufacturer, paving stones called Pavestone, made concrete brick-shaped units to interlocking paving stones and retaining walls to create beautiful landscapes. We advertised, and so that company grew from scratch. It was a startup from zero, where the healthcare companies we bought at an existing place. We started the other one from zero with partners, and that grew through the 80s, and then the kind of a recession in the late 80s, bank savings loan crisis, which was very hard on us. But we struggled through and struggled along. By 14 years later, 1994, we had the volume up to $10 million, and we started to make a little bit of money. It took 14 years to get there, so it takes a longer time to start a startup. But we got to $10 million in 14 years. And in 5 more years, we grew to 100 million, we thought that was pretty cool. Hitting 100 million, that was always kind of our big, hairy, audacious goal, to hit 100. And we did that. And then after that, things, by the compounding interest rates and sales rates and all that kind of stuff, after that, we grew 100 million every 3 years. So you're 10 to get 14 years to get 10, 19 years to get to 100, and then 22 years to get to 200, and 26 years to get to 300 and 400. So it's really interesting. You stay at it, persistently stay at a company long enough, manage through your cash flow and tribulations. We went through a couple of economic crises in there, but the big one that hit us in the Great Recession sort of hit us in 2008, 2009. Just as we were pretty happy with ourselves. We had got an offer to sell our company. It was public. It was Wall Street Journal, a public company offered us. We had $60 million in EBITDA. That's earnings before interest and taxes, depreciation, and we got an offer 9 times that, which is $540 million. Which we had a debt of about $200 million of debt. So it was a real nice. Would have been a real nice harvest for us. And we had big plans, to reinvest the money and give some away, keep some, invest some, that sort of thing. And then there's something called the Hart-Scott-Rodino Act in America that the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, controls. So the day of closing, March 11th, 2008, just as the recession was just starting to peek its head out a little bit, because things were pretty happy. We actually shook a handshake deal in December of 2007 when things were just still booming. Then, if you recall, the financial crisis kind of hit late 2007, early 2008, and then when Lehman's had broken in the fall of 2008, that really started the whole crisis. And but in any case, in March, we're sitting around the lawyer's table waiting for our cash to come in, the wire to come in the closing date. We got a call from a lawyer instead for the Federal Trade Commission saying we'd like to defer this 30 days, and we'd like to do an investigation into your pricing power over. Raise the price of paving stones in America, which are making concrete blocks, which we thought was kind of goofy at the time, because there's thousands of guys making concrete block. But we had good customers. We had Home Depot and Walmart, and the people we were selling to had Lowe's and Kmart. And eventually, a year later, January of 2009, after we struggled through the recession, every day our sales were dropping. You could see the crisis was bringing our sales down. We're getting, we had to close us. And then kept asking for more time. And after going through every email we've ever written and every document we had, they decided that we could form a kind of a badge of honor, I guess, when your little company you started 22 years earlier was big enough to shut down. We thought we could raise prices against Walmart and Home Depot, which is a joke. You can't really raise prices to those huge customers. But anyway, they killed the deal, and that drove us into 3 more years of going through the recession, which we went through a lot of battles, and that we had to take another equity partner. We're on the brink of bankruptcy a couple times in there, and just gets you thinking about what's going on and what your life is all about. And it was really this crazy, terrible, stressful period. But it worked out okay to in the final analysis, some things happened, and the angels were working and presented some opportunities that enabled us to get out of there and recover a lot of our investment.
It's never easy. You sit there and you're like, hey, I'm about to walk away with this big payday, and then it doesn't happen. And you deal with the economy and everything else. It's not easy. And what you saw in your business, which is the magic of compounding. You keep showing up and doing it. You do it right. Things will compound and they start to grow at an ever faster rate. And so it's
amazing. Yeah.
Nice to see all those things kind of, the life lessons we always hear. I guess you had the joy of experiencing them.
For sure. And it's really about the quality. You need quality product and service. So the big boxes had to deliver. They'd order the product on Monday, and it had to be delivered in their store and on their shelves by Friday, because it wasn't there for the weekend. They didn't sell it. If you didn't ship it on time, they didn't sell it. We didn't sell it. Everybody loses. So the logistics of getting things delivered were very, 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 very important. So as a result, when I sold that company, I kept our freight division, our logistics division, and I still have that today, which is 10 years later after we sold it. That grew again. When we sold Pavestone, it was about a $10 million division that the people that bought the company didn't really want. So we thought we'd keep it and see if I could do it one more time. And hopefully we're doing it. We're having been a pretty good several years for us. So it's going back up again as our third major enterprise.
Congratulations. So with what's happened during COVID and the great resignation, I think more and more people are thinking about the entrepreneurial life and looking for that success. In the book, you talk about 5 foundational pillars that are needed for a successful life as an entrepreneur. Can you share what those 5 are and why they're so important?
Sure. Well, I like to call it my PEP formula, PEP. Just to remind myself of the energetic, enthusiastic, mischievous little kid. That peppy little kid you call him when you see somebody like that. So the first P stands for persistence, like I mentioned earlier. The persistence is the most important thing when you're building anything or doing anything really in life. You don't have to be smarter than your competition. You just have to be more persistent and try harder and work harder and just never give up. Like Winston Churchill used to say, and just never, never, never give up. So I think that's the real key on that one. So you try something, fix it, try it, fix it, try and fix it. The first things I do never work out. So I'm used to trying things 3 or 4 or 5 times and just make an adjustment, try it, make an adjustment, try it, make an adjustment, try it, until you finally get something work, and then your customers are satisfied and your numbers are okay and your prices are good. The next one is education. Like my mother enforced in our family, you need to get all the education you can get. There's that saying, that your health is your most important asset. Don't do anything to jeopardize it. But education is the most important thing you can acquire, because nobody can ever take it away from you. When I was sitting around those tables dealing with the lawyers, you worry about they're definitely threatening bankruptcy and liquidation and all that kind of thing. And in Texas, they have a homestead act. They can't take your house in bankruptcy, but they can take your furniture and your cars and everything else, your dishes. So it gets you thinking. You never want to. They can't take your education is the one thing. So you get that behind you. I've encouraged kids to get that. And big on top of education, you don't want to start a business right out of school. Malcolm Gladwell wrote the book The Outliers. You may have read that. But 10,000 hours of experience basically for anything, be it a lawyer or a hockey player or a baseball player or a pianist. 10,000 hours, 5 years full time basically, or if you're in the county business, it becomes 1.5 years full time because you work all crazy overtime. But it's I think that's real important too, getting the experience and getting the 10,000 hours before you're not. Obviously, some people don't do it, but Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, quit during school and get started in their enterprise. So it works. It's always the exception. But I think the education with the 10,000 hours is your greatest asset and the greatest thing you can accomplish. The other thing is the other E. If I ever spell this out, it would spell PP. But my marketing, even my marketing class, but it's not the PEP, would be a better acronym than PP. So I'll go with that. So, and entrepreneurship is the next E in any case. But it isn't a job; it's a lifestyle choice. The goal of every business is to make a profit. So you just have to keep struggling along. First you fail, but the fun part is creating. You have to create your vision, create your goals, and go from there. The vision is really interesting. The vision I found in Proverbs recently. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Proverbs 29. So it's interesting that in biblical times, vision and purpose and action were still the important values. The other thing I really like, the other scripture I really like is you call ask and it will be given unto you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened. That's in Matthew 7. I think that's a great one. I use that at most of my sales and marketing meetings. You need activity. You guys have to ask for the order. Ask and will be given. See and you knock, and especially knock and the door will be open. If we have in our company, we market our logistics and freight transportation basically. But it's a sales. A lot of it's sales job. You have to knock at the door. You have to keep prescribing and never give up. So I think the scripture is all kinds of sort of Bible teachings about business and how to do it properly. So the other E, entrepreneurship is the next E then. And then the next one is passion. You got to love what you're doing, Rocky. If you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to be successful. Typically, you want to assess your level of passion and pride for what you're doing and get you all fired up. It needs to fire you up every morning so you have the purpose and you create the purpose to complete your business and build your enterprise for your family. So you need a purpose and a vision to jump out. It gives you a reason to jump out of bed in the morning. And then the final P is the partnerships. And the partnerships you make with, I think you have to be partners with all your stakeholders, your customers, your suppliers, your vendors, as everyone you deal with, especially and especially your customers. But those partnerships you build become create the vision and purpose, and helps you get up every morning and do good and create the win-win with all your stakeholders. You have to have that win-win to really to make sure both sides of both parties of every transaction are going to be satisfied and happy with what you've achieved.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. There's something that keeps popping up, and it's that persistence, and that's the acceptance of failure and mistakes and continuing to move on in spite of them. And I think for a lot of people, that's the struggle. They fail once, they give up, not realizing that, no, that's just the first attempt. You have to keep going. You try and try and try again until you achieve the success that you want. It's never an easy straight line.
That's for sure. To get good judgment, you have to get experience. You have bad judgment. So you need the bad judgment to get good judgment, really. And you learn from it and just keep building, because you just can't give up. And you're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot of things. Some people more than others. I think I failed. I think every day I do the first time I usually fail on it. But it teaches you a couple of things. One, you don't bet the farm on your first enterprise, because chances are 50-50 that you don't make it, or you do make it. You want to keep something back and go with partners or do something to minimize your risk.
So you kind of mentioned this. How is spirituality kind of woven into your business? You've brought them together. Has that been an important factor for you?
Yeah, I think it is. You try not to wear it, on your chest, but it's important. I think I grew up in a Mennonite. My uncle's an ancestral Mennonite, I mentioned, and they're very religious and very helpful. Barn raisings. People, back in the old days, people didn't have insurance. They said somebody's barn burned down, or a tornado took it down, and they did barn raising the next several days, and you come back and your neighbors would build you a new barn, and just kind of that support and the sharing and the passion and the charity that goes with that.
We've got Amish near us. They still do barn raisings.
Yeah, they sure do, yes.
And I think they even move the barns, too. It's amazing to see how they can live and survive without all our modern conveniences, and somehow they still make it work.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Very much so. So one of the things you talked about, because you've done it both ways, you've started businesses from scratch and you've bought businesses. What's the better way to go?
Well, the better way, in the faster way, is to buy them, of course. But if you don't have the capital, you can't buy them. So you have to do something, either negotiate with maybe a spin-off of where you're working, or your customers. Maybe you would like to do help you get started, or help you finance a new enterprise that they could maybe get the raw materials cheaper, or you could do it better, cheaper, faster. There's all kinds of opportunities to doing it without kicking in a lot of money. But if you can get a growing concern, obviously, check my one company 14 years ago, $10 million. If you buy a $10 million company, you save those 14 years, right? So there's ways that, and all that learning, then you start off with a list of customers and employees and suppliers and manufacturing techniques and all the things that go with that. So it's obviously better to buy something, and the big companies all know that, where you buy a platform, or if you can build your small company into a platform that becomes valuable to a big internet company, for example, like people are finding, selling their internet-related companies for billions of dollars to a bigger internet company. that works pretty good as well.
Yeah, it's been amazing to watch that and see how they do it and how much they pay. And I think that's the big thing, getting to the first $1 million or $2 million in sales is difficult. It takes a lot of time and a lot of hard work. I don't think people realize, though, that you can buy a $2 million business with 10% down, just like you can buy a house with 10 or 20% down. There are creative ways to do financing. And if it's a good cash flowing business, it won't take you long. You'll have to still, suck it up for your years. You've got debt service, but once you clear your debt service, things are looking pretty good.
For sure. We sold our first house. We actually worked real hard to pay off the mortgage in the early years and sold it for cash. And that was our down payment on our first healthcare property. But that's a good way of doing it. But you also don't want to, we were pretty confident that would work. We don't want to bet the whole farm, as they say. But it's certainly a way. But if you can buy something, oftentimes you get a bigger company with very small, like you mentioned, a very small down payment or no down payment. If if it's trouble, maybe you're buying something at a bankruptcy, but you have the talent to run it or the experience to run it. There's always good deals there. And you can take over a company that's in trouble it has $10 or $20 million in sales or more for a little down payment. If the sellers have the confidence in you and your ability and your experience to make it work.
And that's why during a downturn, opportunity presents itself, and you just have to go looking for it, right?
For sure.
And they're going to happen. And you've been through a bunch, ups and downs. How do you deal with that emotionally, the constant roller coaster?
It's pretty tough going through the bottom of the roller coaster. I didn't know it was a roller coaster until I wrote the book, Rocky. And then this is your life's really a roller coaster, isn't it? And I said, well, I got it wrong. I guess there is, because at the time you're just fighting through it, and you don't think of the next hill or the next uphill, downhill movement. So it's you just fight your way through it, and all of a sudden you probably keep the cash flow going through all the years and build on that. With lines of credits or whatever you as efficiently as you can, and get it going. And it does grow after a certain amount of years. You get the compounding, and pretty soon you're at 1 million, and 5 million, and 10 million. So it's generally works out as long as you follow your set your big, hairy, audacious goals. Your BHAGs, I call them, the big, hairy, audacious goals, and follow up with your daily KPIs, key performance indicators, and measure them. And let all your people know you're measuring them. And then what's measured matters to your staff and your people around you. So if they see you measuring something, they're going to want to know it. And I like to do a report and pass it around to everybody that gets involved in it, so they all see the results of the efforts from the day before, and see the sales revenue and the shipping revenue and the cash flow and that sort of thing.
And I think the corporate work world is changing. And I got to see Daniel Pink speak this morning. And that was a big part of what he talked. People want meaningful work, and they want feedback and to be able to see progress. They want to see progress every day. If you are doing meaningful work and you're making progress at it, then you're enjoying life. It's a lot more fun, regardless of which side, whether you're the entrepreneur or the employee in that business.
It sure does. And it motivates you to just be better at what you do and be a giver. The world has lots of takers, so we need more givers. Be a giver. If you can afford to be a giver, the world has enough takers. To just show your gratitude. And we've one of the things we did, we started a school of entrepreneurship in my hometown. In fact, the same school that told me about the Fortune 500, I started gave some money and started a center for entrepreneurship. So kids are working for more than the Fortune 500 opportunities.
So talk a little bit about it. What is this school and who does it serve?
It's a staff of about 8 or 9 people. Just teaches shows kids the different opportunities. The high profile ones like Amazon and Tesla and Elon's rocket company. Those are all pretty high profile. But just to show kids the different opportunities, and they're into it now. With Google, people you can find out anything you want to know about this one topic. So if they're they're doing something they're interested in, like their hobby, if they're a sportsman or a boater or whatever you're in, everybody loves something. My wife's mother was a great crocheter and made all kinds of beautiful wall hangings and that sort of thing. So this is if you're passionate about it to begin with, it's easier to produce it. And if you're not passionate about it to begin with, you should either do something else or get passionate about it. Because if you love what you're doing, you never work another day in your life, so it's, and I think in my career, I felt like I never really worked. I mean, did lots of work, but I never felt, burdened, or except maybe those few weeks when the lawyers are chasing our butt around. It was no fun. But most of the time it's pretty great. And, creating employment and creating jobs for families. We had about, over the years, my wife and my wife's company and mine, we had about 5,000 employees, so 5,000 families are supporting. And that's always a nice feeling. You want to make sure you don't let them down, and they could prosper and do everything like everyone wants to do.
It's funny. I hear business owners talk about it, but I don't think employees realize it. Most business owners, at least the good ones, the givers, they feel the obligation of supporting those 5,000 families. And because they count on you to be successful in order for them to eat dinner at the table. And then that's a pretty big burden. And I don't think people appreciate how often that happens.
Absolutely. Just encouraging people to, build their own 401k and that sort of thing, and care for their families and things like that is so important. We had and looking after your health. Your health is the most important asset. Don't do anything to jeopardize it. We had a policy about no smoking. We didn't hire anybody. Of our 5,000 employees, none of them smoked. And we knew about it because it's such a hard. Why threaten your life or destroy your life over smoking? So we just we had a hiring policy. But the only thing you can discriminate is anybody more is smoking. So it's one most states at least. So where we could, we wouldn't hire a smoker.
And health is a big part of life. It's one of the pillars that we talk about. And unfortunately, when we're young, we don't worry about it so much.
Exactly.
And the damage takes time. And that's the problem, is by the time you realize what you've done, hopefully it's not too late to start making change and bring it back. I
got a letter the other day from a person we hired, an immigrant. We got to help him get his papers, got his immigration papers, get him a citizen. And when he was writing the book, he wrote me a note saying he loved that. He also loved the no smoking policy because he was tempted to do it and didn't. And one of his friends just got ill. So it's along with your healthcare program, some motivation to not harm your own health is important.
One of the things you also talk about is to keep your friends close and your enemies closer, and even just to keep your largest competitors close and to create those conversations to know what's going on. Why do you say that?
Well, people ask me that. People ask me, how do you do it? With trade associations, that sort of thing. There's a lot. You talk about quality issues, and you can't talk pricing, illegal. But you can talk quality and set standards, installation standards, raw materials, that sort of thing. And you can really just build rapport. And with Google now, you can Google anybody, any competitor, but and see what's going on and what their product's like and all that kind of good stuff. But your competitor doesn't have to be your enemy. There's win-win relationship. Every relationship with your suppliers and can be win-win. And unlike sports, in sports there's got to be a winner and a loser. In entrepreneurship, you can have everybody win-win in just about all your relationships. So I keep telling people, just because they're competing with us doesn't have to make them your enemy. There's just guys like us trying to scrape out a living like everyone else is. But there's one of my guys just came back from a conference actually yesterday, and he said, it's the one day a year we don't hate these guys. You don't have to. You see, I'm walking down the hallway and you're chatting and just talking about business and the economy and things like that. So it's just a good opportunity to. And then also when I sold both our companies, we ended up selling them to people who were in the same business, kind of competitors. But they're your friends and they know you. They know your standards. So we closed especially our last company. We had 30 days to close the company. It was a huge deal, and because we had a good relationship with the guy that bought it, he did it with virtually hardly any due diligence. Came in and he knew what we were doing, and he closed like a $400 million deal less than 30 days. So you can do that if you have the relationship with the people, and basically you're a friendly, I guess, a friendly competitor.
That is true. Trust is something that allows for things to get done much, much faster. When there's no trust or a lack of trust, it makes life much, much more difficult. And when there is trust, you can just get it done fast, which is really, really important. I don't think businesses realize how much a lack of trust will cost them over time.
Exactly, Rocky, and that's so important. The other thing was the other power of prayer, power of positive thinking. The other side of that is thank God for unanswered prayers. There's so many things you wanted, and you prayed for it real hard, you never got, and then a couple years later you think, whoa, I'm glad I dodged the bullet on that one. Then the industry crashes or something like that, or the economy changes, or the pandemic hits, or whatever it is. Sometimes you want your angel to not carry forward with what you want asking.
Well, they protected you, right? By not doing so.
Exactly.
Is there anything else in the book that we should have talked about that we didn't get a chance to?
It's foundational and charities and that sort of thing. It's so important that we support our things like the Salvation Army. There's so many, and a lot of religious, church-based foundations, homes for Habitat. Is so important. Give people a chance that aren't so fortunate, help them get started. It's real important and we need real valuable in our society.
It is. Giving back is an important part of that as well.
Habitat for Humanity is what I was trying to say.
We always like to get people to take action. What is one action step people could take this week to move forward in their lives?
I used to think a lot about. I used to talk about to my guys thought and action. The Bible is full of action versus seek and you shall find that one. And lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. The total there is profit of mere talk only leads to poverty. So there's many things that talking about. There's a point in time where you have to stop thinking about it and talking about it and take action and do it. And I think that's important for everyone to really. You think if somebody starts different things that you think about. If somebody starts a restaurant, opens up on a corner, and you always say, "Well, I always thought of opening a restaurant there," but you didn't do it. You got to take the action. If an early bird gets a worm, that's I think that's so true. And just taking the action, apply for your next college course or your next degree you want to take, or your whatever conference you want to get to. You just have to take the action to get there.
That is so true. That is the one thing I find for most people is taking that first step is the hardest. And once they get moving, life gets easier. But making the first step kind of holds people back quite a bit, unfortunately. And sometimes it's just jump.
Somebody's interested in business, Rocky. I think getting a job in that industry or working for, if you think somebody's better, working for the quality competitor, getting experience in that, getting Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours experience in a business, so you learn it and you become pretty good at it, and that's you have the expertise to start your own business one day or take over a division of his or something like that. And really, there's lots of opportunities like that, and lots of people got started. You have to start a business right out of school. Much better to get 10,000 hours of work for somebody for 5 or 10 or 20 years, and as long as you're on the corner when the bus stops, and the opportunity presents itself. If you're there, sometimes your employer will offer you a division, or your customers will offer you something, or lots of opportunities. But you just got to be ready for it and be on the corner and ready to jump.
And I always like when someone else pays for my education.
That's always great.
I like
too.
To get paid to learn.
We've done that as a company. We always paid for people's extra MBAs and college courses and that kind of stuff. And usually it works out. Sometimes you went to work for the competition, but they're better off for it, and hopefully we are too. So it's the education is a rising tide that raises all ships, and I think that's so important in our world and in our society, from public schools to the university.
And I think today, though, there is so many free resources that are available that people should just take advantage of it. Many universities even put their college courses out for free on the internet. Many of the top Ivy Leagues do that. So you can get quality education just by investing the time. not necessarily the money.
Oh, for sure. And community colleges are, every county's got the community colleges, and they're great and relatively low cost. And lots of guys learn, great skills and trades there.
That they do. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Oh, that's a tough one, Rocky. I think work hard and be persistent. Persistence is the most important thing. And never give up. Look after your family. I'm married 50 years this year, and I have a great wife. My favorite angel is my wife. She's brilliant at it. And so that's so important. I think to have a good relationship with your kids and your family and your enterprises.
Congratulations. Any marriage advice?
Always say yes, I guess, Rocky. I don't know.
Yes, dear. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
Oh, wow. You're tricking me with these, Rocky. I think it's, I guess it's looking after your customers as much as how important that is. It's so vital. And then relationships, how important the rest of the relationships are in life and business, and your relationships and your the angelic relationships you create and find, and just your friends and family. A lot of friends turned into angels during my tough times, and they were at my side, literally, into my office once a day for months, practically, giving me helping me strategize how we get out of the ditch and get back on the road.
And that's always nice. It's amazing how many people will help you when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. Exactly.
And it's a two-way street, I guess, also. So you have to correspond. And part of the win-win, you want your friends to win also, and that you don't want to be the only guy with the pot of gold.
That is true. You got to share it. If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Well, I'd say work in your career in whatever field really turns you on, and get a job, even a low-paying job, or get your foot in the door. Just learn the industry and learn customers and the techniques of the trade.
And so it's been a while since he was on, but Jonathan Harris was on, and he talks a lot about this 10,000 hours. And he's like, why are you waiting till you're 18 to start your 10,000 hours? Why not start when you're 12, 13, 14 and get half your work done? And during that time, you can also figure out if you really love it or you don't love it. And you can pivot through it so that when you're 18 and 20, you're well on your way to success, and you've upped the compounding curve even earlier.
I think that's so important, especially your first job in high school or grade school, or wherever you're at a Pepsi. When I was a little kid, I had to start bought a Pepsi machine, for over 36 months at $12 a month, and sold Pepsis at 10 cents and made 3 cents on every bottle. So I had to sell 400 a month to break even. So I learned my first enterprise in managing the cash fixed cost of $12 a month and variable income of 3 cents a bottle. So the old fixed cost to variable cost syndrome and the principles of cash flow. It's as a 13-year-old, you learn that pretty quick. And owning that little Pepsi machine was a great experience and taught me all kinds of stuff. Now the numbers are same principles, just bigger numbers these days. So
just add a zero, right? That's what we tell everyone. Just add another zero. It's all the same. If people would like to learn more about you, about the book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Go to Bobschlegelauthor.com, and it's Angels and Entrepreneurs. Bobschlegelauthor.com is our website, and it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and the usual places for book sales. I mean, all the proceeds are all going to charities. It's it's a fun way to give back. It's we're really excited about it so far. We've actually honored. We became the Wall Street Journal bestseller list the first week of that in March. So it's that's kind of something we didn't expect, and we're hopefully the Wall Street Journal entrepreneurs will take a liking to it.
Congratulations on that. And we'll put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rocky. Best of your show.
Can you imagine driving from Canada to Texas week after week to build a business? That's a lot of work and dedication. Of course, when you grow up on a farm, hard work just seems to be a way of life. Speaking of work, I find those that keep working keep living. But they find work they love to do, and that's what keeps them young. This week's action step was to take action on something you want. Decide what it is and take the first step. I've said it before, I'll say it again. The first step is the hardest. Once you take it, things become clearer. And the really cool thing is you can take a teeny tiny first step. So just take it. Next week, I have on Coot Blackson to talk about the magic of surrender, finding the courage to let go. He also has an amazing journey to share, and I know you'll love it. By the way, who do you know who might appreciate listening to Bob's story? Can you share it with them? I would appreciate that. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.